movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen.
And hello and welcome to Cold War Radio Live, your number one source for government and political talk anywhere, coming to you from the Steel City Resistance Studio in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr., deep down in the broadcast bunker. Hope this is sounding all right. I got some reports that it's breaking up. I hope that's local from the source. But anyway, from Ice Station North Studios somewhere on the vast Norwegian Sea, come in, Radio Norway.
Good evening, Hutch. Good evening, Jack, and good evening to our lovely audience wherever you are listening to Cold War Radio. I hope we'll make one show for the history books tonight. You were breaking up a little bit in the beginning, but hopefully that will smooth out.
All right, well, I hope so too. And now from the Shenandoah Valley studio in Virginia, on the outskirts of the Hurricane Band, come in, Jack.
Hey, Hutch. Hey, Norway. Hello to all the fine folks that found us on Friday night and Spreaker and the Spreaker chat room. Please share it. We're back, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8:30 to 9:30.
That's right.
Share it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, you got to do that. And I will say that the numbers are starting to improve, get back to normal, which is one of the goals of doing this. Please follow me on Spreaker. Ladies and gentlemen, like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio 22. You can catch the show on your Roku if you look up Blueberry or YouTube. And you can catch the show on the 405media.com out of Los Angeles. Cold War Radio is a proud iHeartRadio program and we have a free Cold War Radio app in your app store. You can catch the show on Spotify, iTunes. The email to the show is hutch@steelcityresistance.com, and the Cold War Radio Patron hotline, 412-567-1460. The chat room is up on Spreaker, and please, ladies and gentlemen, go to steelcityresistance.com, catch the research room, and even more importantly, please become a Cold War Radio patron.
You are listening to Cold War Radio.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I sent incidentally, right off the bat, I did talk to Stacy, and she is going to come back on the program for the Friday night panel after high school football season. And for those of you that have ever had kids involved in high school football, you will know exactly why that is more important than the show. I went through that great part of my life. I loved it. Watching the kids play football, outstanding. So she will be back.
It goes very fast.
It does. Doesn't it? It does very fast. Now, I sent my colleagues an email a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the plight of the white farmers in South Africa. And I made a call out because I remembered that I had conversations with people from South Africa, and I hadn't heard from them, and I sent the email to my other cohorts here. So I just want to say to G from South Africa, I didn't want his name mentioned. I don't blame him. Hang in there, man. These guys are going through some tough times, and he has promised to give us updates on what's going on down there. Now, I mean, from what I understand, it's not mayhem 24/7, but you can get yourself in a situation where people are getting yanked out of cars and murdered and things like that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go visit your history source and look at what happened in Mozambique under Robert Mugabe. The same thing is occurring with the communists as they took over. Frankly, American politicians' favorite communist, Nelson Mandela, they treated that skunk like a king. And his wife. But anyway, go get up to speed on that. That's going to be news into the future. Now, incidentally, I asked him if President Trump standing out on this issue made a difference, and he said he didn't think it did. So anyway, you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, I read it, and it's some of the news that I've been seeing out of there from other various sources on social media and all that is describing it as it is, but you don't see the media covering it in a way that seems fair to these people. I mean, you've got the farmlands that they're claiming, and it appears that it's almost racially motivated. You would think that the United Nations would take a look about what's going on there. What do you think, Norway?
Unmute.
Oh, unmute. There we go. I have my finger in the keyboard here, so sorry about that. Yeah, we did a documentary, sort of a full hour show on the South African genocide, as we call it, because it really is a genocide, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is really racism at its worst, because we are talking about the white minority being singled out, and the media, they're totally ignoring this issue simply because the minority is white. And when you go back through history, and we cover the South African history extensively in Cold War Radio episode 487 on the 24th of July last year. And when you look at the South African, the history of South Africa, the really violent tribes which you see today, they came from the north, and they actually massacred the indigenous people, the Khoisan people, the Click people. They have a Click language, very easy to distinguish, and they lived peacefully in their small hunter-gatherer tribal communities in South Africa, and then came the Zulu warriors from the north, and like the story goes, burned the shit out of Rome, like they say.
Absolutely.
So go and check Cold War Radio episode 487.
Yeah, if you don't know, you can get all of the episodes on the Spreaker site. You can get to them via steelcityresistance.com. And also, always the latest 10 episodes are always posted there on the website, so you don't have to go any further. Let's talk a little bit about... This is Chelsea Clinton, ladies and gentlemen. Chelsea Clinton. And I want you to listen to the way she talks about abortion. I mean, this is... these people are brainwashed. It is crazy.
It is hard to not let your exhaustion exhaust you, though. I mean, whenever we talk about Roe,
not let your exhaustion exhaust
that fight
you.
Has been happening for the entirety of our lives. My mother had that fight. My grandmother had that. I mean, how can you keep from like the generational exhaustion pulling you down? How do you keep going in the hopes that your daughter doesn't have to have this fight?
That's the answer, isn't it? Right? Like I look at my children. And I, to quote Jim Kim, optimism is a moral choice, right? Every day I make the moral choice to be optimistic, that my efforts and my energies, particularly when I am fortunate enough to be in partnership kind of with fellow travelers, hopefully will make a difference. Yeah. And when I think about all of the statistics that are painful of what women are confronting, Zerlina, today in our country, and what even more women confronted pre-Roe, and how many women died, and how many more women were maimed because of unsafe abortion practices. We just can't go back to that. Like, that's unconscionable to me. And also, and I'm sure that this will unleash another wave of hate in my direction, but as a deeply religious person, it's also unchristian to me. Right.
Well, you handle the hate pretty well.
No, it's true.
There's been a lot of it around this.
Enough. Unchristian to stop killing babies. Norway.
I mean, this is absolutely disgusting. I mean, this is, this is the Romans throwing the Christians into the arena to be eaten by lions, and then claiming that, well, we Romans, we are Christians, so we're just doing this for your sake because, I mean, this is so ridiculous. When you look at this, this absolute, I mean, this is, what are we talking about now? Planned Parenthood, on the top of my head, I think they're up to 7 million killings now. It is, and this woman, or whatever you want to call her, is calling herself a Christian.
Yeah, it's crazy, Jack. I mean, this is, they flipped the words around to call that women's health.
I'm exhaustion about the exhaustiveness of this.
Generational exhaustion.
Yeah, generational exhaustion. I mean, when she said, I look at my children, I couldn't help but think, I look at my children and wonder why they all look like Webster Hubble. But both of those folks in there, you can tell they're in a certain clique. They're run in certain circles, and they believe each other's thoughts, and they don't understand that when it gets out there to mainstream America, they're looking at them and saying, why? Yeah. Why?
Now, on another note, but it's kind of the same, you've got this ridiculous Pope Francis doubling down on the people that are coming out accusing clergy of all kinds of different activities, and he's calling them like Satan, the great accuser. Is this guy nuts? Somebody's going to burn down the Vatican.
Yeah, well, I think that that this Pope, ever since he became Pope back in 2013, he has been a complete devastation for the Catholic Church. And and he came into power by a coup d'état. And I can't for the life of me understand why good Catholics aren't standing up to this monstrosity. I mean, and this shows the hypocrisy. I mean, he has touted Marxist ideas, which isn't very
climate change, everything.
Climate change, and it isn't hard to see where he's going with this. And he's a Jesuit. He's the first Jesuit Pope ever, and there's a reason why the Vatican and the Catholic community has done everything in their power to stop Jesuits from coming into power. And I mean, he is tearing down the Catholic Church.
It's going across the Atlantic too. I've seen stories now from Germany that a whole lot of minor boys are coming forward. This is a worldwide thing, and it didn't start last year.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think the tragedy of this is that he has put a face on the Catholic Church like we care. We want to listen to any quote unquote victims. But in reality, he turns around on his heel now when the fire is about to burn his behind. And he's calling everyone that is an accuser, they're like Satan. So there you have it. If you're a victim and you say, I've been victimized by this father, or your parents say that, you are now labeled Satan because you accuse someone of sexual predation.
Yeah, there's a key thing with this Pope that I learned looking into his name and his background. It's something for the listeners. You can look up liberation theology.
And there's also there's a flavor of that called black liberation theology.
Yes, and it's got very strong traits tied to communism. Actually,
absolutely.
Actually, the Jesuits they are seen as the proto-communists. Actually, the ones that inspired the communist movement. And while you're in the process of looking this up, you have the liberation theology. Look up Black Pope.
There you go. Pope. All right, let's swing it over to the weather a little bit, gentlemen, and let's move to MSNBC's professional meteorological coverage of this hurricane. There's a lot of interesting things, weather patterns and things like that they're going to talk about. Let's listen to their depth of knowledge on weather.
Just explain what a storm surge is and why it can be so destructive.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Chris. What we're seeing here, I mean, Florence is a huge hurricane. I mean, this is one of the largest hurricanes that we've ever seen in the Atlantic. And you can't really talk about this without talking about climate change. So we have some evidence that was published this week that the storm is actually a little bit bigger and the rain is going to be more intense because of warmer water. And we've also had about a foot of sea level rise over the last 100 years or so in North Carolina. So all of these are working to make the impacts of this hurricane worse. So we're going to have all that wind pushing the water along the shore, and the rise of the level of the ocean because of all of that wind is going to create the a tremendous amount of flooding, unlike we've ever seen on the East Coast.
Yeah, there's two aspects here, right? So there's the storm surge, there's also the rain. One of the things that happened with Harvey, which we saw, is that the slower moving the storm is, the worse it can be because it just stops and drops a lot of rain. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly, and we're seeing that a little bit too in the last few decades. That hurricanes are moving a little bit more slowly as they're making landfall. As weather patterns change in response to climate change. So there's a lot going on here, really, and it's gotten to the point where we have a president that is denying the impacts of this hurricane season last year and this year, and actively making the problem worse by not addressing this root cause of worsening.
Man, I think that guy stuttered more than Obama.
I know.
Did you ever hear somebody stutter so much? I mean, and not know what he's talking about. I mean, talking in generalities that the sports guy could have done.
The question was, what are the effects of storm surge? Did he even touch on that part of the question?
And he tried to reel him back in, but even that didn't work. I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the absurdity of today's networks has got to affect their bottom line at some point. I say just keep doing it. And we're going to keep doing it because now we're going to CNN. CNN's even better. CNN comes out and talks about the hurricane and the effects, but they bring listen to the title of the person that they bring on to talk about this.
This time for a CNN reality check as Florence bears down on the Carolinas. A damning Washington Post editorial is calling President Trump, quote, complicit in this storm, not for failing to prepare, but for failing to address climate change. So senior political analyst John Avlon has more for us. What do you say, John?
That's right, Allie. President Trump has been reaching for storm superlatives, as he is wont to do. The biggest, the worst, the most dangerous, and who can forget, tremendously wet. But while President Trump has been talking up our preparedness, his policies have been tearing down our defenses to climate change, which is often blamed for extreme weather. In fact, on the very same day Trump was discussing Florence from the Oval Office, his EPA proposed rolling back restrictions on emissions of methane, which is 25 times worse than carbon dioxide when it comes to climate change. And that's just the latest environmental policy targeted by the Trump administration. According to a July study from the New York Times, nearly 80 regulations could be on their way out. They include everything from no longer requiring chemical companies to leaks, to cutting cars and trucks' fuel efficiency, pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accords, dismantling the Clean Power Plan, and opening nearly all our coastline to offshore drilling. It's so bad that according to 2 Harvard scientists, Trump's environmental policies could lead to an additional 80,000 unnecessary deaths every decade. Not convinced about the connection between climate change and extreme weather? Well, warmer water means more intense storms. And when President Trump called Hurricane Florence tremendously wet, he was actually onto something. The amount of precipitation in our worst storms increased nearly 20% between 1958 and 2007, according to one scientific study. And the relative number of these extreme storms is also up about 40% in that same period. But you don't need to be a tree hugger to recognize the cost of climate change. Here's a stat that will get the attention of even the most committed capitalist. The total cost of U.S. hurricanes this decade is more than $343 billion. That's with a B. And southern states, the heart of Trump's base, are the ones that have sustained the most damage and will likely face the greatest cost in the future. But just last month, the Richmond Fed released a report that found, quote, evidence that higher summer temperatures could reduce overall U.S. economic growth by as much as 1/3 over the next century, with southern states accounting for a disproportionate share of that potential reduction. And in 2012, North Carolina lawmakers passed a bill explicitly ignoring climate science, forcing officials to work from outdated predictions of sea level rise rather than the latest figures, which are more dire. Their stated motive? To boost development along the coast, which is exactly where Florence is headed. Short-term thinking isn't sufficient to deal with long-term problems. And here's a final stat that should get your attention. We found out late last month that the oldest ice in the Arctic is breaking up for the first time ever, in a development that one scientist simply called scary. This isn't rocket science, folks. It's climate science. And as long as we continue to aggressively ignore it, the cost in lives and dollars will only escalate. And that's your reality check.
And ladies and gentlemen, of course, we did a full hour on climate change as well. This is totally ridiculous, and I want to bring a couple facts to bear because there is a reason it does cost that much, and there's a reason that it costs that much, and it's ridiculous. And the reason is the National Flood Insurance Program that was started in 1968, and that's when all these costs started coming to bear. I mean, before 1968, if you saw structures on the beach, they were shacks, they were cabins, they were places people went, but they weren't the extravagant mansions that are on there now that get blown away every couple 5-6 years, and the government rebuilds them. They should end that program. It is not a program that is compatible with the free market. If a place gets blown out by hurricanes, smart people don't build stuff there. You don't live there. It's the same way with Staten Island in New York City. 100 years ago, nobody lived on Staten Island because this stuff happens. And you can research it. I mean, I've got a list of the deadliest hurricanes, and it goes back to the 1600s. You know, this isn't something that just started. It just started getting more expensive because because there was lobbyists in Washington from the coast that came out there and wanted to make some money, so they made this insurance program. No, you don't live where it floods. If you do, you get flooded out, and it's on you. Let's welcome. Let me hold on a second, Norway. Let's welcome Carrie from Florida to the show. Go ahead, Carrie.
Good evening, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Viking, and Mr. Mountain. Hutch, man, you just stole my thunder, man.
Okay.
You just stole my thunder. That's what I was going to tell you. They asked some of these people the simplest thing. Where is Miami? The coast. I live in a coastal city, the largest landmass city in North America. Okay, where are all of our military bases? The coast, naval bases, the coast, and people. There's more. It costs more. Hurricanes are more damaging now and bring a higher cost in total destruction because, well, dummy, there's more people living there. How about that? You know, you stated a simple fact, Mr. Bailey. There's more people living in our country now than there were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago.
But you look at the structures. You look at some of these structures on the coast, Carrie, and they're freaking mansions. You know, and they're not even well built. I mean, they're frames, and they get blown away all the time, and they get rebuilt the very next day.
That's dependent on the different states.
Of course.
I know here in Florida, they when after what's the big one that went down there through Miami, 1990, 91, something like that. Anyway, it after that, then they came up with new building standards that had to be met for any new buildings. They're always updating that. And as far as climate change is concerned, we have climate change. It's called spring, summer, fall, and winter.
Right.
You idiot. So thank you for your time, gentlemen. I just had to throw that in there.
That's fine.
Y'all have a good evening.
Thanks for calling, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carrie.
All right, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We are not alone. We have people understand what's going on. I mean, they just do. So we'll move from there. But the whole idea with the climate change, I think everybody can see that it's a big sham, and it has nothing to do. I mean, on the last show on Wednesday, we chronicled Gutierrez out there, blaming Trump before the thing even made landfall, and it's just it's ridiculous the way this thing's going. 80,000 unnecessary deaths every decade. How they figure that out, I have no idea. I mean, that's something that it just. How do you figure that out, Norway? How do How do you say that 80,000 more people are going to die over decades?
I mean, look, this fake news production has been going on for a long time, and Obama made it. So, I mean, look at if you go 18,000 years back, the sea level was 400 feet lower, and you could actually walk from England to France, and it's been rising about 7 inches per century. But suddenly, IPCC, the National Panel on Climate Change, comes, the UN IPCC comes in on the playing field here, and you see suddenly they tripled natural sea level rise due to geology. In 1993, there was a sudden acceleration of sea level rise, and the reason was simple. They introduced a new measuring system, and they didn't calibrate the equipment properly. So the data there was fake. And I mean, it goes on and on and on. And this is Marxism. This is Marxism. If the Marxists in the Democratic Party can thread that news around the necks of every citizen in the world, Americans, Europeans, everyone, if they can rethread the news called climate change, I mean, which is ridiculous in itself because that is what climate does, it changes. But if they can rethread that news and thread it around our necks, they will strangle us with this climate change hoax.
Right. Let's welcome Mississippi Jim to the program. What's going on in Mississippi?
Hey, Hutch, how you doing? Hey, let's see. We got Norway and we got Jack, right?
Friday night panel.
Mississippi.
Right.
Hey. Good talking to you. And I guess Kerry's still living, right? That was a good. I'm glad he said that, because that climate change, the term, they went from global warming to climate change. Mm-hmm. Now, how stupid can you be to call it climate change when that's just, we all know that just like Norway just said, just like Kerry said, the climate changes. And just like people ought to listen to these people on the Weather Channel. He was just explaining the other day about the hurricanes back in 1920 or 1930, and because somebody said, well, was that Trump's fault, and he was explaining, surely not. But, I mean, the Democrats, it's unbelievable. And I grew up thinking I was just average guy. Now I know that I'm on the 50% that is above average. The other 50%, they're dumb as hell, man.
Yes,
I'm gonna tell you, these Democrats, liberals, and socialists. And here's the other thing, like on Chelsea, choice. That's another thing, and here's my contention on that choice. Does a woman have the choice to have intercourse? Yes, she does. She makes that choice. Then she gets pregnant, and then Chelsea says, but all these women, and I'm wondering about statistics. She quoted a lot of problems with women and all the bad things that occurred to all these women. I'd like to hear some statistics on what she's talking about. Did y'all hear what all she was talking about, how bad everything's been for the women all these years, how many women had been maimed and how they'd been treated and, died and all this kind of stuff. But you never hear any statistics on how many died because they didn't have an abortion or they, and one thing is we all know the fact that abortion, 95% is for convenience. It's for not wanting to take the responsibility of having a baby. That's the reason they have abortions. And, of course, Hillary, she promotes it. And the night that she said, and I'll stop it here, but the night she said on that debate what she said about abortion, I tell you what, man, I don't know of a better way to show how evil people like Hillary Clinton are as far as children or babies are concerned. She said it was okay to abort up until the time the baby was born. Do y'all remember that in the debate? Where she said
that's
that?
what they're doing.
Yeah. And it's like, it's okay if it's a baby, because it will be a baby if it's about to be born, but it's okay to abort it right then. I mean, I like to fell out of my chair when she said that, but the Democrats, that's okay with them. They have no problem with it whatsoever.
I was desperately trying to find a website. I couldn't find it, but the murder of
Chelsea, I'm glad to know that. I guess I'm not a Christian anymore because I believe abortion is wrong. But she said that you're Christian if you believe abortion is okay. In other words, killing a baby is okay. They're so backwards, it's unreal. I just can't believe it. I had to call you guys, and I'm glad I got hooked up with you, Hutch, and glad you got your thing. You're gonna be on 3 times a week.
At least.
Okay. All right. Now sign up on your GoFundMe Hutch thing.
Patreon.com/CWR. Thanks, Jim. We'll talk to you next time.
Okay. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Thank you, Jim. That was an excellent call. I mean, Jim has... he is absolutely... he crosses the T's and dots the I here. Because this is evil and it's propaganda. It is the antithesis of Christianity we're talking about here. And it goes for climate change as well.
Yep,
Human-made climate change is a fabrication. It's a Marxist tool to enslave us, to make us pay taxes, pay taxes until we're blue. But, climate has always changed. And you go back to Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1635. They experienced a Cat 3 or Cat 4 storm with up to 20-foot storm surge.
All right, we got to move on from this. We're running. Hey, you got to watch the clock, Norway. You got to watch the clock, man. We're going to move on from climate change.
Okay.
Jack,
yes.
these victim-centered groups that you see everywhere, the feminists, the gays, the whole 9 yards, they're all phony. And I hope nobody gets involved with any of these leftist groups. The Hispanic Caucus chairwoman says thanks but no thanks to Trump's Hispanic Heritage Month reception invitation. Can you imagine? If that doesn't say how phony they are, I don't know what else does. It's like these feminist movements that will not say a word against the Muslims and the way they treat women. I can't believe people still have faith in any of the NAACP comes to mind. I mean,
well, there's plenty of those groups in D.C. and it shows the hypocrisy. They're for the advancement of the Hispanics and President Trump is what we have, the lowest unemployment rate for Hispanics in history. Sure, he's they're fighting him against the immigration deal. Sure, fight it out, deal with it legislatively, but sit there and snub their nose and an invitation for Hispanic Heritage Month it just shows how petty the left is right now. And we're heading right into the midterm elections. So we're seeing this coming rapid fire from the left, all these attacks. I mean, the hurricane
the whole Puerto
issue
Rican
right now, they're coming and attacking him. And I've got the story later on that we'll get into more of that. But it's... I don't know, maybe the left thinks that they have enough folks that are on their side and can see this snub as a positive thing.
Well, don't forget, they've got Google. They've got Facebook. They've got Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, your weekly Jihad report for the 1st to the 7th of September, 29 jihad attacks, 132 killed, 223 injured, 3 suicide blasts, all happening in 10 countries. The religion of peace atrocity of the week, Amsterdam, 2 Americans stabbed at train station. Latest misunderstandings of Islam On the 12th, in Iraq, a suicide bomber takes out a half-dozen restaurant patrons in mid-bite. On the 11th, in Afghanistan, a suicide bomber blows himself up among a group of protesters, laying out over 60. On the 11th, in Afghanistan, a child is obliterated by fundamentalist shrapnel outside a girls' school. On the 10th, in Keith Ellison, Somalia, suicide car bombers destroy 6 lives. On the 10th, in Libya, Islamic State gunmen invade an oil corporation headquarters, killing 2 staff members. And finally, on the 6th, in Afghanistan, a Taliban in police uniform opens fire on 8 sleeping officers, killing them all. The religion of peace, ladies and gentlemen, one body at a time.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.
Go ahead, Muhammad, take a knee. I'll tell you, this next story, I'm gonna try to summarize this really quickly. It's called "Care in the Classroom" by Cinnamon Stillwell, and it's reprinted from algeminer.com. But there was a guy in 1993 named Ibrahim Hooper, director of strategic communications for the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, said, "I wouldn't want to create the impression that I wouldn't like the government of the United States to be Islamic sometime in the future, but I'm not going to do anything violent to promote that. I'm going to do it through education." 25 years later, CARE could be making headway on that goal through its relationships with U.S. public school districts in at least 3 states. I would gather it's more than 3. CARE, an Islamist group and a United Arab Emirates designated terrorist organization that builds itself as a defender of civil rights, has achieved special concessions for Muslim students and launched the inappropriate insertion of religion into publicly funded education. Meanwhile, pushback from parents and outside organizations is building. Seattle is real bad. CARE Washington sent the district a letter proposing accommodations for Muslim students in classroom lessons on Islam. Then as now, CARE Washington claimed to be fighting anti-Muslim bullying. To that end, in 2012 and 2013, the organization contacted the school district to complain about Islamophobia among teachers. Man, I can't think of a better reason to do something drastic with these government schools, Norway.
This is an onslaught, and it goes on and on and on, and there are very, very few people standing up, and I'm asking myself, why is that? Why is that? And I think that the answer, you can go back to Bush, you can go back to Clinton, and you find the answers back there, maybe even earlier. People seem to have forgotten the American history. So I say, put back American history on the agenda. Learn about the first military attacks on the fledgling United States. That was done by Muslims, and they never stopped. They've kept coming at us. 9/11, 1683, they stood at the gates of Vienna. Now, 9/11, 2001, they attacked America in force. And they kept coming. And the brilliance, these guys are really shrewd, and they've been doing this for 1,400 years, pulling the wool over the eyes of people. And the brilliance of this organization is that they turned everything upside down. They're the victim now, and Americans are the big bad wolves that needs to treat them respectfully and kowtow to their every need.
No, I gotta interject a little trivia that I think's interesting. Speaking of Vienna and Islam at the gates, in that fortress, underground is where the bakery for the fortress was. Mm-hmm. And when they were baking, they could hear digging outside the compound, and they alerted the military commander, who made quick business of the Muslims at the gate after that. But if you have ever eaten a croissant was inspired by the bakers looking at the crescents on the flags outside the gates of Vienna. Just so.
There you go. There you go.
So,
and this is September 11th, 1683. Was the second time, actually, that the Muslims were beaten by the gates of Vienna. They needed to pass Vienna to get to Rome, and they wanted Rome at all costs. They wanted to make the Sixtine Chapel into a mosque, and they needed to go through Vienna for that. And they actually attacked the city first time in 1528.
And they also did the same thing successfully in Constantinople with the cathedral there. They replaced it with a mosque and renamed it Istanbul. There you go. Anyway, why don't you talk to us, Norway, about the recent elections in Sweden and what's going on in that country? I know you've been digging into that pretty much. I saw a post you put on Facebook, but hit the audience with that. It's an important situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is... remember back in 2016, the 2016 election cycle, and Bernie Sanders, and how fantastic Sweden is.
Yeah.
That's where he's talking, right? And he was holding up Sweden as a glowing beacon for us all, and he couldn't wait to become president to turn America into a Sweden. Well, I'll tell you what, Hutch, and dear audience, and Jack and everybody, Sweden has turned into one big banana republic. What you see now has been an uprising against open borders. It's been an uprising against what they call carbecues, which is actually burning cars around the cities and often coordinated. And then you have the election. They held a general election on Sunday. And before the election, the Sweden Democrats, which has absolutely nothing to do with your Democrats, the Sweden Democrats are the challengers to both wings, to both the right and the left wing. They are absolutely, they want to stop immigration completely. And before the election, they had, and there are 8 parties in Sweden. So when you have 20-30% of the votes, and there are 8 parties in Sweden, you're doing pretty well. In June, they reached 28.5% in the YouGov and Metro's polls, and in the latest Sentio poll, they had 24%. And it was estimated that they could actually make 29% in the election, because you have this bias. When people are asked directly, when someone calls and asks, what are you voting? And, a lot of people, because the Sweden Democrats have been linked to Nazis, they had a few members 8-10 years ago that actually were Nazis, but they were kicked out of the party. But they've never been given any peace for that. So when people call you and ask you what are you going to vote, you tend to say I'm not going to vote as the Sweden Democrats, But as the party ends up on election night with far fewer, they were actually, they thought they would become the biggest party in Sweden, and they actually ended up becoming the 3rd biggest party. And the reason is quite simple. In the polling stations around Sweden, the socialists, obviously, or it could have been any of the uni parties here, they didn't even pack up the ballots. the ballots were still sealed when the Sweden Democrats came. In some areas, they took away the Sweden Democrat ballots. And, when the representatives for the party came back, all the ballots, they were thrown out. They hid the ballots, and there's one fantastic photo of ballots that's been printed with they have a color coding, so each party has its own color, and they printed ballots in the Sweden Democratic Party's colors, which is yellow, and they printed their own names on the ballot. So false ballots were used. People were asked not to seal the envelopes with the ballots in, and they used pencils instead of ink pen when crossing out people. You have a registry that shows that you have been voting, and they used a pencil instead of an ink pen to cross people's names out.
So is there any backlash from the electorate, or what's the end result going to be? Is it just going to stand that way, or?
The end result is that the conservative bloc and the socialist bloc, they are trying to isolate the Sweden Democrats. The Sweden Democrats ended up on 17.6%. The Conservatives ended up on 19.8%, and the Socialists ended up on 28.4%. And I believe, with so much fakery going on, I believe that they actually snatched the victory out of the Sweden Democrats' jaw. But here is the gist of it all. Since the Sweden Democrats, after all, got 17.6%, remember, they thought they would perhaps get 29%, but they got 17.6%. And that means for the other parties to be able to isolate the Sweden Democrats from coming into government, they will have to work together from left to right. Socialists, conservatives, everyone in between, they're probably going for the German model, where everybody now is in charge and nothing gets done.
And the gets bigger.
Jack, and the gets bigger.
Jack,
exactly.
Report from Virginia.
Oh, that's it. I mean, I'm listening to this. I'm like, man, I thought the United States politics was a little whacked out of. I couldn't imagine having to deal with 4, 5, 6 different parties, and then having somebody with 20, 17% being part of a group that can actually get together, like you said, conservatives and the Democrats getting together to take control of the country.
And remember, all leftists cheat.
And I think they've gone far beyond the the votes that they find in the United States in the trunk of a car, with these pencils, unsealed envelope deals. Woo!
It's a banana republic.
It's pretty shady things going on there. Pretty shady. Woo!
So did you have a story or no?
My story. Considering the attacks on President Trump, I just saw one today. It was Democratic Representative Nydia Velázquez wants a 911-style commission to investigate Trump's Hurricane Maria response, and this has to do with Puerto Rico. I did some research on this, and it's been over a year, and we're currently dealing with a storm affecting many of our citizens in the southeast now in the Carolinas. But they want to. I mean, it's so vindictive. It's so obvious that they're trying to affect the election in November. If you remember last year, Hurricane Irma, one of the largest hurricanes as far as intensity ever recorded, brushed Puerto Rico like maybe a few days before Maria hit. There was most of Puerto Rico had already suffered severe damage. The United States already had over 3,000 people, military, FEMA folks in there helping the aftermath of Irma when Maria hit. And Maria basically took out the rest of what Irma didn't take care of. You know, that they had a very poor infrastructure, and it was pretty severe devastation. And it's also an island out there, so there's, you know, logistics and moves and all this stuff. And it's just beyond the pale that you have somebody in Congress trying to call for a commission. This Breitbart article goes through. It says FEMA has a website that you can look and see up to date how much has been put into the recovery after Maria, the second one that hit, right? Irma and Maria. $1.4 billion in assistance through FEMA's individual and household programs. $798 million for housing. $608 million for other assistance. $3.2 billion from FEMA for public assistance through the Small Business Administration. 52,481 loans approved, and $1.8 billion for assistance to businesses. $20 billion for housing and urban development block grants. 59,469 roofs replaced. 8.18 million cubic yards of debris removed. 74.88 million liters of bottled water delivered. So if you look at the stats, this is just purely a political move by the left.
It's despicable.
Again,
it's despicable. And Rose, I said it's despicable. And Rose in the chat room says she puts a tweet from the president up from 3 hours ago. They say all these people died in the storm in Puerto Rico, yet 70% of the power was out before the storm. So when did people start dying? At what point do you recognize that what they are doing is a political agenda couched in the nice language of journalism? I believe him 100%, and I believed it when I said it before I saw him say it. Because I remembered the low casualty count, and I'm thinking, where'd all those thousands come from?
Yeah, I saw an article, even as Snopes, can you believe it? Snopes piece in 2017. 2017, this was a little bit after that, bumped up the number to 64.
Yeah, right,
I mean, any loss of life is tragic from the storms. But to sit there and utilize a, George Washington University in D.C.?
A computer model.
That goes into the thousands and toss this out right now,
right,
when the United States and the folks in the Southeast are suffering right now, and a pretty damaging storm, and they're going through it right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about it, the insidious part, was it wasn't a body count, it was a computer model. It wasn't even a real deal, you know. And let's not forget, 2 days ago, Wednesday, the congressman from Illinois.
Well, he bragged today, Chris, about how ready he was, and he kept telling us how big the storm was, because, you know, he likes using monosyllable words like big and huge and great, and he used them all to describe the oncoming hurricane, instead of reassuring the American public about what was there to make sure that they could be kept safe. Because everything is huge and big, and of course, you want to know what I fear? Is the calamity, because of the lack of coordination of the government with the National Guard and with local government, the lack of responsiveness and preparedness of this government, because the president, he wants to find out who is the one that wrote that op-ed piece about the chaos in the White House, because he wants the Justice Department. He is so consumed by the calamity that exists and the chaos that exists that he's not really prepared and focused, because he spends every weekend golfing instead of preparing. You know, 15 of the top managers at FEMA are acting. They're not even in their permanent positions. They haven't even taken time to give them their jobs. But
the calamity. You got to really worry about those oncoming storms.
You know what that reminded me of, Hutch? That one political analyst on the CNN weather piece, right?
Yeah.
It was almost like these folks with the talking points. It's laughable to us because we pay attention, but it does worry me, because there's a lot of folks out there that basically take their word as gospel.
Yep,
and
right.
we already know That is,
yeah. Well, you know, I think this is tragic because the media, they should be turning all their attention to helping people, to make people aware where are the resources if you need them. How can you secure your property? How can you get to safety? What do you need to do? What do you need to stock up on to survive if you're cut off from electricity, food, water, etc.? I mean, that's what they should be spending 24/7 of their broadcasting time. But no, they use the time to score cheap political points on BS.
Yeah, and you know, they ought to name a county or a city in Puerto Rico after the president, because as Lorene Tien in the Spreaker chat room says, so the computer model says 3,000 people died, but actually 68 people died. Wow, what a success. 2,900 people saved. You know,
yeah, you know, and it's the same with climate models. Garbage in, garbage out.
Yep, that's right. All right, let's try to wrap this up. Let's go with winners and losers for this week. We'll start with you, Norway.
I'm going to make this a very quick one because I got totally fired up on abortion and this climate change BS. So I'm sorry I spent so much time on that. But winner, socialists in Sweden. They've done it again. I mean, they've held on to power for 70 years almost consecutively and 100 years more or less, and they managed to cheat their way into a victory. And the loser, to this week's loser, is of course the Swedish people, because ultimately the real Swedish people are the ones that are going to lose big on this. And the open borders policy will continue. And a country without borders is not a country at all. And let that be a lesson to you, to America.
All right, Jack.
My winner this week are the first responders, the emergency workers, the folks in the National Guard deployed, the volunteers such as the Cajun Navy that are right down there ready to assist and help all the folks that are dealing with Hurricane Florence that is coming through. Well, it's a tropical storm now, but those are the winners. Those are the people that are going to go out there and save lives, help folks, restore power, all that. I applaud those folks. They can work tirelessly, and it looks like they're going to be there for quite a few weeks. My loser is the New York Times. They put out a hit piece on our UNS ambassador, Nikki Haley, with a picture of her and claiming that she's living in the high hog, and she spent $53,000 on curtains for the UN ambassador residence up in New York. Come to find out, one day later, these plans and accommodations and accoutrements to this ambassador residence was set up by none other than former Secretary of State John Kerry and the Obama administration.
Susan Rice.
So they had to put a retraction, and at least I'll give them credit for doing that, because, and this is from the same place that put out the op-ed piece, right?
Sure.
The secret, silent truth sayer that's, basically never Trumper.
The great
I don't
lady.
believe that one at all, but
no.
So they're my loser. New York Times, you earned it again.
Yep. My winner is Kathy Griffin. Comedian Kathy Griffin, you remember her. She's the one that had the severed head of Donald Trump.
ISIS Griffin.
Yeah, comedian Kathy Griffin is set to receive the Comedian of the Year award at the upcoming Palm Springs Comedy Festival in November. So again, it is proven true that everything the communists touch, they break, even comedy. My loser, John Kerry. John Kerry receives widespread condemnation for shameful and insidious support for Iran. And I'm going to make a prediction. I think John Kerry's going to get prosecuted for this. I don't think they're going to let this go. This is, he's been doing this his entire career. His entire career. He threw his medals over the White House fence after a phony stint in the military, in the Navy, just to start his political career. He went on and he disparaged U.S. GIs on the Dick Cavett show, comparing our GIs to Genghis Khan, not Genghis like everybody else. See, I think Kerry has a problem because Kerry's not a likable guy. Kerry's not telegenic. Kerry is kept by his wife. In other words, he got rich because he married into it.
Heinz.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I have a personal connection to that.
You don't make many friends riding bicycles in pink bicycle outfits.
At 70-something years old. You know what I mean? So there's that. And by the way, just to Ken, you already heard it answered, but the Cajun Navy is in full effect, and the president even praised them in a tweet just a while ago. So we're going to pray for all the people that are in harm's way. There certainly are a lot of them. There's going to be a lot of water, a lot of flooding, a lot of politics. But any final comments for this week, Norway?
My final comment must be that I'm also praying for the people that are in the path of this hurricane. If it's any consolation, it's happened throughout history, and it will continue to happen with or without our taxation. So be safe out there. I'm praying for you, and keep your head down. It's been a lovely, lovely end of the week, and I wish all of you two, Hutch and Jack, a brilliant weekend.
And how can people get in touch with you on social media?
Oh, that's easy. I am at Norway for Trump on Twitter and Gab, and that's Norway 4 with a number 4.
Jack.
Yeah, I'd like to just say thank you to all the folks that tuned in, all the folks in the Spreaker chat room. And if I can ask you guys one favor, if you enjoy the show, you like the format, you like what we're doing, please share and let other folks know that Cold War Radio is back Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right now, 8:30 to 9:30. Let's get more people in here and share some positive news in the face of the negative MSM. You can find me at Gab, Jack at Mountain. I usually just post up the link to the show, but I love you all for tuning in, and back to you, Hutch.
Yep, thank you very much, everybody. I love you too. And I've made some recent changes, so prepare to copy. I am Hutch Bailey Jr. on Twitter, Gab, Facebook, and MeWe. Hutch Bailey Jr. You spell Bailey, B-A-I-L-I-E. No Y. Hutch Bailey Jr., B-A-I-L-I-E. No dots or anything, just letters. So there you go. That's my new Twitter handle. I am going to experiment with changing the domain or the name of the website. I haven't got there yet, but I'm trying to get this together. We need to get a little bit more streamlined. You got to understand, when I started out, Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else, Cold War Radio didn't exist. Berg's Eye View existed. So I'll still get tweets at Berg's Eye View, but I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. on Twitter and everything else now. I want to thank everybody for listening live, and I appreciate the comments about if I've left something out. One of the things about this business, when you change things around, there's a lot of places you got to make the changes, and I missed a couple, and I appreciate people for letting me know about that, and I'll do my best to get in there. Please become a patron. It took them, I had a hold on my account for suspicious activity up until about an hour before the show. So now everything's right. Please go to patreon.com/CWR. Become a patron if you can afford it. I'd appreciate it. We got a new one. I said about that on the last show. So there you go. Thanks for letting us into your life for an hour. We will be back on Monday. Who's Monday? Which one of you guys is Monday?
That's me, I think.
Okay, me in Norway.
And it's 8:30 p.m., which is 2:30 a.m. here in
And
Norway.
I thank you very much, man. But I tried to make it on time just for you. But,
there you go. Thank
so
you.
it's Monday is Norway, Wednesday is Jack, Friday is the full panel. Stacy will be back after the high school football season, which won't last much longer, but she's having a great time, I'm sure. I'm going to reach out to a couple other people that I haven't heard on for a while that I'd like to get on here. So we'll see. We'll use them as guests. We're going to keep our co-hosts the way they are. So thank you, everybody. And that'll wrap that up. God bless.
God bless.
that my Trump was gonna lose. We love you, Donald Trump, Trump, Trump. 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 I said Trump, 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 Trump. Donald Trump, yeah. Donald Trump, yeah. Donald Trump, yeah. Come on, come on, come on. Donald Trump, yeah. Donald Trump, do you feel? Make you feel alright. I said Trump, 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 alright.
USA, USA, USA.
Ali. Apprentice. Now, Corolla, why did your team lose? Now, hold on a second. And by the way...
Interrupt this program for Obama to say something.
My fellow Americans, I'd like to announce that I'm running for President of America. As a black man this time. I did some time in jail. I did some crime with Michelle. We stole some fried watermelon. Yip, yippity, Kanye. I'm known to smack up a bitch. I got Kool-Aid in the fridge. I never met my kids. Their real dad is Kanye. Guns, yeah, sold them. Old tricks, yeah, told them. Blood splits, yeah, rolled them. Riding nuts, a hook, baby. Hey, I just met you. So please don't tase me. My name's Obama. Was born in Haiti. I still get food stamps. I'm just lazy. I'm still on welfare. So fuck you, pay me. They might arrest you, but you could blame me. Then roll me over, incarcerate me. If I get unemployed, shit don't faze me. My name's Obama. I'm always Jay-Z. Jeezer? Are you young Jeezer? How'd you get in the White House? I smoke a lot of Newports. I sit a lot on the porch. I stole 2012 Porsche from my neighbor's driveway. I did a lot of drug deals. I killed Osama for trills. I blamed it on Navy SEALs and fucked his bitch sideways. Bro, yeah, I'm holding rocks, weed, meth, heroin, White House garden showing. What you think I'm growing? Daisies? Hey, I just met you. So it's okay, see. My name's Obama. I'm half Kuwaiti. It's hard to look white. Robin Macy's, give me the FUBU. Don't try to play me. Hey, I just met you. So please don't mace me. My name's Obama. I dance like Swayze. If you live in Detroit, you ought to thank me. My name's Obama. I'm Pakistani. Before I came in the White House, I used to smoke crack. I used to sew crack. I used to roll so black. I was born in Dubai. I'd like to go back. Where's all my hoes at? Take off your clothes and don't talk back. Now, the American people have a clear choice. Would you like to get smacked with a pimp cane or with the back of my hand? It's hard to look white. I'm smacking ladies, so it's no wonder y'all crackers hate me. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. I steal your Hummer and throwed your baby. Sandusky touched the boy, or so they say. See, my name's Obama. Chicken is tasty. Before I came in the White House, I used to smoke crack. I used to sew crack. I used to roll so black. If all you haters don't like me, lick my ball sack. Y'all haters fall back. So fuck you, pay me. I mean, do we really need another black guy on unemployment right now? I'm sorry, I get that from my mother. She's a typical white...
Robbed a joint. Like these two balloon heads over here. They were going to try to bang us out of 200 grand? Yeah, right, I'm sure.
Hey, Eddie. How are you? What are you doing here?
I'm over here.
You over here?
You over here? Yeah, I'm over here with him.
Yeah, looking for Carmine.
He was here before. I saw him. He had a suitcase and everything, and then he left.
Carmine left?
Huh?
Carmine left. He's gone. He's not here. Carmine's out.
I think, maybe he went across the street or somewhere else.
Well, listen, good luck with the joint, huh?
Oh, thanks, Eddie.
Yeah, lots of luck.
Hey, go ahead, Jerry. Good luck to you, too.
Hey, they forgot to sign their papers.
What?
They forgot to sign their papers.
Yeah, they don't need those anymore.
Out of respect, guys from other crews got away with a warning. Everybody else, watch out.
You say you were wrong, think that Trump would be gone. Now you're sorry, lonesome and scared. And you say you'd be happy if old Don would go home. Here's a quarter, call someone who cares. Call someone who listens, might give a damn. Maybe one of your fake news affairs. Don't you come around here handing no liberal lies. Here's a quarter, call someone who cares. Never turn back, so this ending caught you unaware. But the fact is Trump's won, and girl, that can't be undone. Here's a quarter, call someone who cares. Call someone who listens, Lord, might give a damn. Maybe one of fake news affairs. Don't you come around here handing me no liberal lies. Here's the quarter, call someone who cares. Lord, a quarter, call someone who cares. Lord, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, this is a island that at its widest level is 12 miles from shore to shore, and at its smallest level or smallest location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
Very small island, and about 24 miles, if I recall, long. So 24 miles long, about 7 miles wide at the least widest place on the island, and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that. The Guam population, I think, currently about 175,000, and again with 8,000 Marines.
I see the
election's a comin', it's right around the bend. And I ain't said one true thing since I don't know when. Well, I'm off to federal prison, I guess it's no surprise. Never thought they'd find me guilty for telling all those lies. I lied about Benghazi, all the secret emails too. I never thought they'd catch me, and now I'm really screwed. Yes, I'm off to federal prison, not where I want to be. Maybe President Obama will quickly pardon me. My cell in prison will have lots of rusty bars. Bill will still be doing interns and do weird things with cigars. Guess I knew that this was coming. Perhaps it's meant to be. But those stupid liberal voters will beg to set me free. Get out of this prison and my time is finally done, I think I just might make another presidential run. Well, you know you can't avoid me, I guess I'm here to stay. And I'll keep right on lying, 'cause that's the Clinton way.
Come on, Misha.
What?
Do you believe in government assistance?
What?
Well, I've got something to say about it. And it goes something like this, bля. Misha takes his girl out for free. Don't need no cash to eat. He pays with EBT. Order. Order. People get so jealous and mad. Americans make fuss, 'cause their taxes go to us. It's bad. So bad. We got a Lexus in parking lot. It does not make a difference if it's legal or hot. Most people have jobs, but we do not all day. We drink and smoke pot.
420.
Oh, it's so unfair. Oh, living on welfare. We don't pay tax and we really don't care. Oh, living on welfare.
Sasha's girl is eating all day. She loves government cheese. Tell me, what does that bitch weigh?
Ой, блядь. In USA we'll never be poor. When we run out of ham, we call up Uncle Sam for more. More ham. Please, please. Пожалуйста. We made our green cards in Photoshop. It does not make a difference if they're bloody or cropped. So hard to spend all the money we got. Oi, bleh. We'll give it a shot. Oh, we're halfway there. Oh, living on welfare, expensive suntans and grooming chest hair. Oh, living on welfare, living on welfare. Oh! Solo player.
This guy's not so bad. I'm glad we picked him.
He's no Thor. Busted. Oh, if we're pulled over, if we get stopped, we'll use your tax dollars to pay off the cops. Oh, it's so unfair. Oh, living on welfare, support our lifestyle, we're grateful, I swear. Oh, living on welfare, oh, it's so unfair.
Living on the welfare. I'm going to pick up my welfare check. BRB.
All right, listen up, scumbags. This is not a mission for little girls. You see that over there? That would be the Mexican border. And we are going to invade, conquer, and own it. Do you understand me? Bullfeathers, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair. Hoorah, that's what I'm talking about. Franklin, they're all yours. Oh my God, we're toast. We don't stand a chance.
You want to talk about the things I've done, but I'm reclaiming my time. Yeah, you want to speak on the battles I've won, but I'm reclaiming my time. Ooh, well, that's not why I brought you here to share it. I'm reclaiming my time. Yeah, don't read my resume, cause I was there. I'm reclaiming my time. I'm reclaiming my time. Yes, I am. My time. Every minute. My time. Every second. My time. Stop talking. My time. Do you know the rules? My time. When it's my time. My time. I can take it back. My time. I'm reclaiming my time. Hey, what about the letter? Reclaiming my time. That I sent you way back when. Reclaiming my time. Give me the answer to my question. Reclaiming my time. Or don't open your mouth again. Yeah, reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time. Yeah, all of my time. I'm reclaiming my time. Oh, yes, I am.
Well, Johnny, I think that one of the things is that people keep looking to government for the answer, and government's the problem. A moment ago, you asked, about people and feeling not only confused, but low and down in America. First of all, the American people, if they would just take a little inventory and look around, you triple our troubles, and we're better off than any other people on earth. And we've asked so much of government, and we've gotten in the habit over the last 40 years of thinking that government has the answers. There's very little that government can do as efficiently and as economically as the people can do themselves. And if government would shut the doors and sneak away for about 3 weeks, we'd never miss them.
They were going to physically destroy the university. Now, why did you
negotiate many times?
Negotiate? What is to negotiate? What is?
The university is a public institution.
That's right. But the university,
for its own community and for the community of Berkeley that live around it.
All of it began the first time some of you who know better and are old enough to know better let young people think that they had the right to choose the laws they would obey as long as they were doing it in the name of social protest.
There are cities in Michigan. Oh, shut up.
This is Cold War Radio on We Are America Radio, WAAR. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. We will be back Monday. God bless.